So welcome back to the second video of this lecture on quantitative research. So we'll forget a little bit about the sample and population, and now we are going to focus on a concept that is called a concept. So what is a concept in quantitative research? A concept is a kind of a block of theory that we will use to build like a larger explanation of how things happen. The concept can be seen like the smallest theoretical unit, like it's the smallest unit you can find in theory. And we need concepts to be able to operationalize things that that happen in the empirical world. Like the concepts will allow us to understand this behavior, these things that happen around, and to quantify them. And they are, again, the smallest. This is why it's here, the building blocks of theory. They are like the smallest unit of theory. Then with that, you can build like a theoretical explanation of something. Maybe it's a bit confusing, but don't worry, we will see. A few examples, I think in our case, our concepts are the ones that we have for our study. Like the global mindset is one concept that we want to study. And we also have other concepts that we will link, like the collectivism or the networking skills. Those are other concepts that can be quantifiable and that we are going to use to understand relationships and to provide theoretical explanations. So concepts in our case are global mindset, collectivism, all of this. So, um, however, in quantitative research, it's not that easy to find or to identify the concepts. In quantitative research, we need to use these that we call indicators in order to be able to quantify those concepts. Like it's difficult. Imagine that your concept is global mindset. How can you measure and how can you quantify global mindset? It is very difficult if you only ask from 1 to 10, what's your global mindset? That's almost impossible that someone will answer correctly. It's so confusing. So because we cannot directly transform empirical data into concepts, then we need these indicators. Indicators are like the way to abstract from the empirical world and make them concepts. So indicators allow us to produce this operational definition of the concept. Um, we're going to discuss more about indicators, more details about that, like some rules, how to find the correct indicator. And when I refer to indicator, think about the items that will appear in the survey. Think like that. I think that will be relevant. The concept can be seen like the variable that we will use. I will also come back to that in another lecture, in the next video. This concept of global mindset is kind of similar or linked to a variable, and indicators are linked to the items that will appear in the survey, like the questions that will appear. If you are confused right now, that's normal. Don't worry, we'll have examples and it probably will clarify. So when I say like if we ask what's your global mindset and then or from 1 to 10 what's your global mindset, that's very strange. People will be confused. So then we need to find smart ways to ask in order to abstract that from the empirics. But on the other hand, we cannot rely with just one indicator to assess from that indicator the concept. It's very risky to use only one indicator to capture the what is inside of a concept. So because of that, we need to use more than one indicator. I think here we discussed that like it can be incorrectly understood. Maybe it can only measure one portion of the concept, but if we use more, maybe we can find a more in-depth understanding of that concept, and also maybe we can see if there are differences uh, on how we ask, and we can even improve the different indicators that we use. So remember, we need to use more than one indicator. Again, this is not a quota, but I think 4, 5, 6, it's a good number. We will discuss that when we actually do our own survey. And connected to that, there is another fact, like, and we will discuss this at the end of the lecture. It is risky to create our own questions, our own indicators out of nowhere. We cannot, it's not the best practice to just use something that comes into our mind to create the indicator that will allow us to uh, construct our concept. That is very risky. So instead of that, what we need, I mean, this is very pragmatical view, but I think we all do it. We borrow questions that have been tested earlier. We read articles that already exist to find the specific indicators, the specific questions that already exist, and we just borrow and use them in our study. We can develop our own, but we will need to test very extensively. We will, before we do our hypothesis testing, we need to test for these indicators if they really capture what we want. So that can take a lot of time. Even in a PhD, maybe you don't even have time. Even in 4 years, it's very difficult to assess that the indicator works. So it's much easier if we just borrow questions from other studies and we use them in our own. We have flexibility to make small changes, or for example, maybe regionalize a few things. So we can do small changes, but we need to be based heavily in previous questions that exist before, previous indicators. So now we'll discuss a little bit, because we have that flexibility. Now I want to discuss a few things that I think are important when thinking about that. Like if we want to improve the question or if we want to modify question, I think these are key aspects that we need to keep in mind. Every time that you want to include a specific question or modify something, remember what is your research question and your research objective. Remember what do you want to find out. Don't lose track of that, because sometimes in practice it's difficult. Like we forget what we actually want. It's a bit strange, but happens. Like, so every time that you reflect on the questions in the indicators, be careful. Remember that, always remember what you have. Another key thing is put yourself on the shoes of the respondent. Like, this will help a lot. Like, is the question too long? Are there too many questions? Is maybe the format too boring or something like that? Think about like that. How can you improve these kind of things when you are doing these modifications or where you are choosing? Also, if you are going to modify something, maybe also use these suggestions to modify or to maybe not modify if needed. Try to not use many ambiguous terms like often, frequently, because that's not that clear. Also, try to not use long questions. That is not the best. Also, try not to present leading questions that put pressure on the respondent. Try to be quite neutral. I think here are a few things that maybe you can reflect on if you need to modify a little bit the questions. Then the next thing that we need to check when once that you have the indicators that you need, that you already construct the type of questions that you will ask and all of this, then you need to check the whole survey together. And to check that, it is important that, for example, you have a good structure. Like, it is easy to move from one section to the next. I think in the whole survey that is very good from the respondent point of view. It is important that you are careful with this. I think in online surveys that is good because you can move from section to section by clicking next. So maybe you can place like 5 questions first, and then they click next, then 5 more questions and stuff like that. That will help a lot. Um, I've also some suggestions in here, like maybe make sure that if your survey requires previous knowledge from the respondent, you put it in there, like maybe you need to be aware of IFRS knowledge in order to do this. If you are aware of that, click yes. If not, no. This kind of thing, make sure that is clear. Another thing, for example, try not to ask all the time, or this is I think an important thing, like um, if you need to include like NA, like doesn't apply, or I don't know. So maybe you can say like from 1 to 10, how comfortable do you feel with the IFRS or with a specific IFRS? And then you can say one comfortable, 0, not comfortable, 10 very comfortable. And then you can also maybe include nothing, like I, I don't know, something like that. Make sure that you can also maybe give the possibility to say no, or maybe the opposite. You don't want them to have this possibility. Reflect if that is needed when you are checking the survey. Also, a few things to note when you are preparing the survey. Make sure that you don't have many open questions. It's also possible to have open questions, but it's not the best. I think we will discuss this during the workshop. Try not to use that many yes or no questions in a way. I think that can be difficult. Try again to keep the sections of the questionnaire quite clear so then people are not confused. These are just a few suggestions. Then once that it is done, once that you finish with the first draft of the survey, it's important that you do this pre-testing and piloting the survey. You send it to someone because maybe there are typos, maybe there are questions that are difficult to understand. So before you actually send it to the sample that you want to study, it's important that you do the pre-testing and the piloting. We will do that between us. When you have your dissertation, you can do it with your friends or with your family. Just say like, hey, can you answer to this survey? Maybe it doesn't make any sense to you, but can you help just to find typos or something? I think that is a good thing to do. So do it and disclose it when you do it. More questions here, more aspects to be careful about. I think I don't want to go into detail. I think you can pause the video and just try to take a look if there are more things that you can check that you are not considering or things that you can improve in this flexibility that you have. Because in the end, remember, you need to use questions that are used in previous research. So in a way, you don't have a lot of freedom, but on the other hand, you have some flexibility that you can use to improve the survey and to improve the quality of the data that you will collect. So for this video, I think we are done. In the next video, we start with another topic.